Good evening, folks. How you doing? This is Jeff of the Dirt Sailors podcast. I just want to say welcome. Thank you for watching us tonight. If you are watching us now and hoping to tune in to see what we talk about in lieu of recent events, tonight we're actually not going to be talking about it. There's a lot to say. All us guys come from different backgrounds. We all have different opinions. And we had a prearranged show, and we decided we would probably postpone that conversation to maybe next week, to when we have a little bit more time to talk about it. Tonight, we'll be joined by a guest, Mark Lortz of the Common Beer Company, and we're just going to have a good time, sit back and have some drinks. We hope you enjoy. It's going to be fun. Stick around. What is going on, guys?
Hey, everyone.
Hey. So I can fix this. Yeah, bring this back a little. How's everyone doing tonight?
Busy.
Well,
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Good. So let's get an introduction going, because Mark, I know you and I have met, but you haven't met the other guys on the show. We may have two more joining us. So I guess the other two guys, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm John.
Hi, I'm Tom. Oh, we both went at the same time. No, you first.
Yeah, I'm John. I actually have been to Common Brewery.
Oh,
correct?
you have. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have been there, John.
Really good beer.
Thank you.
Really great beer. I had that ESB, which
Yes.
I love ESBs. So I was very excited to see a craft brewery have at one of those on tap. So
Yeah, it's not a common, no pun intended, but it's not a common flavor to have around. But it was one of the first home brews that I made. Love making it. I've been making it for about 10 years. So
nice.
we tuned in a little bit, and we were actually submitting it to the World Beer Cup, and then of course that got postponed. So we're gonna have to try again next year.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
Well, hey, I really enjoyed it, and I really hope it does well there. So
Thank you.
Okay, Tom, I sent you a message, but flip your phone.
Damn it.
Ah, so much better.
Okay.
So much better.
Ah.
Better. So how you doing, Tom?
Oh, all right. It's my middle of my work week, so just having a relaxing evening. You know?
Right on. So, Tom, you have not met Mark, so can you introduce yourself? Tell him where you're from.
I'm my name is Tom. I'm coming here from Iowa, Cedar Falls, Iowa. Is where I'm from. So.
Very nice. My neighbor across the street is from Clinton, and we actually have about 5 people here tonight, all from that area. No relation to him, but the Iowans are just coming from everywhere.
Oh, we're everywhere.
Yes.
Iowa's one of the few states I have not been to, and I keep saying I'm going to come visit you, Tom, but yeah, I've been to almost every other state but Iowa. I just keep skipping it.
Everyone wants to get out of Iowa right now.
Yeah. All right. So, Mark, we know that you are busy. We know you're in a brewery. So, typically how we do the show is, and if you're watching the show, is we have a new segment. We have a trivia segment, but we're going to do everything out of order tonight because we don't get to the fun parts. So, well, they like the interview parts till later on most of the time. So, we'll do it now. So, Mark comes
Yes, sir.
from us. Yeah, let me go ahead and do this. Okay.
Ooh, nice.
So we'll keep the banner up, and this is recording, and I'll make sure this is going to go out to all the local.
We're very professional.
Social media sites. So let me go ahead. Out of respect, I have not opened any of these beers. I was going to wait till I was on the show to open each one of them, and I am opening up now. It's the Muzz Pale Ale. So
Perfect.
I'm going to get a taste out of this one.
Yeah, so the Muzz
Nice.
is the Muzz is what we like to call it. It's basically a northeastern hazy IPA. but we took
nice.
out the wheat. So we actually took out that kind of milky, grainy look, but we kept everything else in. We've mixed a little bit of Citra hops in there, about right around about 4 pounds, as well as El Dorado and Azaka. So those are all that would give you these really big fruit flavors. So on the nose, you're going to get some peach. And then as you get into it, you're going to get a little more citrusy with the Citra, as well as a little bit of tartness with the Azaka and El Dorado. So it's very big beer. It's actually 6.9% beer. So we serve it in 12-ounce glasses. And it's become one of our staples. We're actually selling it out to a lot of places locally. And when we ever do get around to bottling and canning, that'll probably be one of the first ones we do.
Sweet.
Now, I have to tell you, Mark, I just moved up here from the Tampa area, and down there, High Light is kind of like the Bud Light down there. I think this immediately took me back to Florida drinking a High Light, but this is a much paler, lighter, softer version of what of a High Light, and I think almost more of a dinner beer than because High Light. Yeah, High Light I think is a little bit strong, and it's not for everyone. I would say this one, people that are not into IPAs but still kind of like a little bit of that citrus, this is a good one. I like it. I like it.
We actually have go ahead.
Could you hold the glass up to the camera so I can get a whiff of that?
Yeah,
right there. The brown bottle. Yeah, there you go. Brown bottle.
IPAs in general, I find are pretty accessible.
Yeah,
and
that's the interesting thing is we find a lot of people that come in that don't like to drink craft beer. We'll start them on something easy like a Pilsner, just give them a little taste. And every time they say, well, there's just, this, that, we'll direct them to the Muzz. And believe it or not, even though it's a pale ale, you find a lot of people that don't like craft beer will dig into that beer without blinking an eye.
Yeah, and it's funny, I review beers for a local magazine here in Evansville, Indiana. And I say that about a lot of hazy IPAs in general. It's like they're perfect for people who don't generally like IPAs.
And they love the fact that they can say, I like craft beer now. So it's a good thing.
Exactly.
So, Mark, how long have you been the head brewer, brewmaster there at Common Beer Company?
So I've been brewing beer for about 10 years, 8 of them at home. Started with a Father's Day gift from my daughter and my wife. And long story short, we were looking to open a small business, and this kind of fell into our lap, so we decided to pursue it. So my wife and I own the business. We have no investors. It's just us. And as you guys have been here before, it's a very small place, very manageable. But your original question was, how long have I been the brewmaster? And to be quite honest with you, I've never been the head brewer here. I do all the brewing with our head brewer. And just for those folks, brewmaster is not a word that's commonly used in the industry. Brewmaster is actually it's kind of like going for your doctorate. It's a very difficult title to actually get. So most of the brewers that you will run into are either head brewers or assistant brewers. So my first brewer, which was named Justin Cheney, he's actually moved on. He's now with Firehouse Grill down the street here. He was very adamant about people when they would say, oh, you're the brewmaster. He would say, no, I haven't earned that title. I don't deserve it. So as far as a head brewer is concerned, I've always had a head brewer. But the recipes and all the brewing, I'm completely involved with 100%, making sure that we're picking the right ones and then actually doing the brewing with our head brewer.
Okay, that makes sense. So you kind of come up with the flavor profile, and he brings it to scale.
Well, it's actually more of a collaborative effort. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, a lot of the recipes that we serve here are from my original home brewing, but I do lean on my head brewer who has the commercial brewing experience that kind of helped me dial that into a commercial level. And then, of course, we are very open. I am very open to having my head brewer be extremely creative and involved in coming up with his own beers, his own recipes. And then we just kind of work collaboratively. That's the best word to use. I still have a day job, so it's very good for me to have somebody that can do this a little more often than I can. But brew days, I'm always here.
Hey, Zippy.
Oh, it was a troubling day. I just say that my car died at Wawa. Like, an hour and a half ago that got left. I brought my laptop, but I forgot the mouse, and I shut the pad off, so I had to get another one.
Oh my God.
Oh, I need shots. That's what I need.
You're on the wrong
Zippy.
show, man. This is a beer show.
Oh.
You
Beer
need
and shots.
beers
I'll
is
take
what
it
you
all.
need.
Zippy.
What's up?
Do me a favor and show us your muscles.
There
There you go.
license for them guns.
Absolutely. I'm double packing.
Okay, so what was I gonna say next? Okay, so this is Zippy. So Zippy and I, we served in the Coast Guard together. It's how we know each other. We started this podcast out as just a couple Coast Guard guys, but it's kind of ventured off into different areas, and that's where we are now. So as we were talking about Mark, so you kind of touched on the beginning. So you started off with just doing brewery at home. How did you go from home, just doing it as a project, to where you are now? Because you have, I don't know, I think it's one of the coolest breweries around. I like the neighborhood feel of it, and your flavors are solid. So you went from doing it at home to this. Like, how did you get from A to Z, or wherever you consider yourself now?
Well, A was easy. Just get a home brew kit and start, grab my turkey fryer and start just making beer. A couple drywall buckets and a little bit of magic, and there you have beer. To Z was just a blur, but in essence, what we did was I was brewing beer from home. I was doing a lot of stuff with putting into kegs, putting into bottles, like you would expect a home brewer to do. I have a friend of mine who owns a restaurant nearby. He had a private party for a friend of mine, and they asked if I would bring some of my home brewing over. So we brought a keg over to them, and it sold. Like, there were 20 people there, and we blew through the keg in about 40 minutes. And
Wow.
my friend looked at me and he said, "That's it, dude. If you wanted a business, this is what you need to be doing." So that was basically step B, and now we are at step Z, and everything in between was just fly by the seat of my pants and talk to a bunch of people, and just you kind of just piecemeal it together as you go. And if you talk to people that have been coming into the brewery for a long time, they'll tell you that when we opened, as with most breweries, our beers were C- at best. And a lot of that is just kind of getting used to your system, kind of understanding how to brew commercially, making sure the equipment works, which is a massive undertaking on a daily basis for a long time. But it's probably most breweries that you have open up, you really need to give them about 6-8 months before you should really begin to critique them, if you want to call it that. Because it just takes a while. I mean, if you think about, the first time you use any piece of equipment, you're not going to get it right on the first time. So you have to give people time to kind of get up and running. But the transition from a process standpoint really wasn't that big of a transition. My system is very manual in nature. We have an electric system. Basically, our controls control temperature and they control pumps. Everything else is just what I've been doing at home. Getting the right grain bill, getting the right hops, making sure that it's the right temperature. That's all stuff that I was doing at home anyway. So the biggest trick was taking it from 5 gallons to 195 gallons. And that was very difficult. Yeah.
So awesome. Yeah, it is. So how large is the brewery now, and about how many barrels do you expect to do annually?
So we do about 47 barrels a quarter, which takes us up to, as do the math, about 178 barrels a year. We have a very small system, as you see behind us, or behind me. It's a 6.5 barrel system, which we normally run about 5 barrels. Next to me, I have my fermenters. So we can, from brew to keg, it's usually anywhere between 3 weeks to 4 weeks, and I have only 5 fermenters. So we are, as most brews are, you're kind of hamstrung by the equipment that you have and the capacity you have to make beer. But I will say 47 barrels a quarter for a brewery my size is pretty aggressive. especially with the equipment that I have.
Cool. So, let me ask you this: Have you ever had a bad batch? And if so, how long did it take for you to figure out what caused it?
It's a good question. So we've done, I think we're up to about 140 batches to date. Of those 140, I've only had to dump one.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, which was crazy. But
Right.
I have had a couple that came out not what we expected. But the great thing about craft beer, if it's not what you expect, you just turn it into something else. So we've had some lagers that turned into ambers, and we've had stouts that turned into porters. So that's the beauty of it, and no one expects perfection. So as long as you're truthful with your customer and tell the story and talk about the beer and what happened and where potentially the fail points were, most people are very open to trying basically anything you'll throw on tap at them. So we had one of our first beers we had, and I don't mind telling this story because it's pretty common knowledge. One of our first beers we made actually came out tasting like a campfire. It was smoky like you couldn't believe, like a charred piece of wood. And so we ended up putting it on tap and basically just being honest with the customer and saying, hey, look, you're gonna if you like smoke, this is your beer.
Somebody always drink it.
Oh, absolutely. And the crazy thing is there's no way
try that.
I can but there's no way I can repeat it. I can't repeat that process because I don't know where it went wrong. So I still have people to this day, which is a year and 3 months later, coming in and asking for the smoky beer, and I'm like, dude, I can't do it.
Do you have any idea what caused that at all?
Yeah, we did end up finding it because I have an electric system. We have actually elements that
burned out
the boil. Yeah, so it actually had some protein that had basically just settled onto it. So from one batch to the next, we fired it up to do the next boil, and all that protein was the first thing that burned off the element. So, lessons learned. We didn't do it again, and by God, I'm never going to do it again. Exactly.
I made fire.
Yeah, fortunately, it wasn't smoking because I did not want any fire engines showing up.
No.
So I'm switching. Yeah, I'm switching now to make sure it's gone. Okay, so we are on the Rude Boy. That's a tongue twister. Porter. The Rude Boy Porter.
Rude Boy.
Porter, porters I always considered a meal in itself. People say that about Guinness, but I say that about porters. Porters, I can typically never do more than 2 without needing to take a break. They're delicious. They're delicious.
It's like coffee and steak for breakfast.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so our Rude Boy, we have just a single hop in that, and that's a Chinook hop, which is from out west. It's actually pretty light in body and very approachable, but you are going to get notes of chocolate. You're going to get notes of coffee, but it's really not a heavy beer.
It's not. It surprised me. I just took a drink. Usually, porters have almost a molasses thickness to it, but this one, no. It's for a porter, it's really light. It's really light, and it's got a really rich. And there's a coffee taste. Is that what you said?
You're gonna probably smell the coffee versus taste it. Yeah. But the chocolate, you'll definitely be able to pick it up. I feel so bad that you other 3 don't have beers to drink, and I apologize.
I got something.
There you go. Good.
It's a Lancaster County Cerveza beer.
Yeah. In the age of digitalization, this is I think what we're forced to do. I'm pre-smell-o-vision. So I've only been to Mason. I've lived in Mason, Ohio. I just moved here in December, so I'm just getting my bearings. What's what, and I believe that in talking to you, you said you've been open about 1 year and 3 months. Is that right?
Our 2 years actually in October, so about 20 months now.
Okay. Well, awesome. So, since you have opened, what's been the single most impactful piece of equipment purchased for the brewery, and how has it helped?
Probably the single most impactful for any brewery is the glycol chiller, which is basically the unit that controls temperature in the fermenter. You can get indoor units, you can get outdoor units. We have an indoor unit. It is extremely loud because it's basically a jet engine that runs 24/7. So we ended up having to put it into its own separate room, and that was not an easy cost to swallow. And in that separate room, there's not a ton of airflow. So we've had to kind of jury rig a ventilation system specifically for that item. So it's the single most impactful, and unfortunately for me, the single most pain in my you can imagine.
Yeah. You can swear on here. You can swear on here.
Yeah.
You can say fuck. It's okay.
We're not censored. We're not networked.
That's awesome because it's literally it's been the biggest headache since day one. But it truly is probably the most impactful piece of equipment because it allows the brewer, the fermentation process. You can control the temperatures, and it's very vital to the fermenting of making the yeast active, putting the yeast in dormancy, getting rid of off flavors, being able to dry hop without affecting temperature. So any brewer would tell you, as far as brewing itself, the temperature is probably the most impactful thing that it'll ruin a beer. Like if a fermenter of mine were to go up to 82 degrees, it would be destroyed because the yeast would not only become active, but it would also die in the heat, all in one failed swift, one swift move. And that literally will destroy a beer. Unfortunately,
at my homebrew kit, we had to put the thermometer in there and watch the mash, and you had to make sure that it was the right temperature. And
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's probably been the most the biggest headache, but the most important piece of equipment, which is literally the worst combination of things I could have. But we're making it work. We found some solutions, and we're moving on.
Tweak on, little tweaks.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have to tell you, I am enjoying this porter. Porters, I'm always a little hesitant just because they fill me up, but this one I'm digging a lot.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of great feedback. We're probably going to throw that into the U.S. Open this fall. Try and get an award for that one. I think it's going to do really well.
Nice.
So awesome. The next question, I have a lot, and feel free to, if you need to think, okay, because I did write down a lot of questions. So being a small brewery, do you find that there's a lot of pressure put on you to match or be better than the other breweries around? Is there a real competitive nature around the breweries in this area?
That's an interesting question. As an industry, there really is not a ton of competition, especially as a craft brewery industry. There's a lot of collaboration that occurs. I am friends with all of the brewers and the owners around me. Matter of fact, the brewery down the street, as Jeff, the owner came in today and sat and talked to me for like 35, 40 minutes and just talking about the business, how things been going, what's working, what's not. So as far as competition is concerned, I think the craft brewery industry, we really cheer each other on. It hurts a little bit when you enter a beer into a competition and you don't do as well as the guy down the street. But the nice thing about craft beers as well, or craft breweries as well as bars and restaurants, is the better and the more and the better breweries that you have around you, the better it is for your own brewery. Because what it's doing is it's just driving people into your area to come and get a product and then go try something new. So we are very encouraging of each other. If we go, when we do events, we all do them together. If I have an event I sign up for and they have some slots open, I'm calling the guys down the street and saying, hey, you guys got to get into this thing with us. We hang out together, we drink together, we meet, quarterly, if not, more often than that. And so I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the industry is still relatively new and it's a fun thing to do. I mean, people just enjoy drinking beer and getting drunk and trying new things. And, I think that one of the best examples that I could prove that is Asheville, North Carolina. If anybody's ever been down there, Asheville has 29 breweries in 5 square miles, and they are all packed. They're packed all day, all night, and it's all because there are so many options down there. that if you don't like one, you can go right down the street or right next door and get a different experience.
Right next door. Yeah,
it's like a brotherhood.
Awesome.
Everyone bonds together.
It is, and it's amazing. Like when the whole COVID-19 thing happened, I was just absolutely awed at how many people were calling me and rallying around us, and we were rallying around them, and we were all sharing information and what's working, what's not working, and you adjust as you get feedback from other breweries. So it's to say it's a brotherhood is I think a great term. It really is a collaborative, just brotherhood of people that are looking for every one of us to be successful.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I like going to breweries. My late teens, early 20s, I was a club guy. Then I became a bar guy, and then I don't know. I just feel more at home in breweries. The relaxed nature, the better. It's good conversation, and I don't know. I like sitting and talking about beer. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It tastes good, and it gives me a buzz. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in breweries over the years. That's for sure.
See, the guy whose house I'm at right now, technically he's not a brewer, but he's a distributor. So his job is to distribute, and he distributes for Budweiser. But there's a lot of different ones, like the one Lancaster. It's technically a craft brew that I'm drinking, and we always get to go to tastings and stuff like that. And
okay,
I'm gonna have, but not work.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to put just a brief pause. So there's a Facebook. Okay, we're getting comments, and I don't know who it is. So Nashville's been blown up too. So I'm willing to handle. So unless you authenticate through StreamYard, it just says Facebook user. So drop a line to say who's this. I'm already willing to handle Kentucky Gentleman.
Own it, baby. Own it.
Yeah, I know.
Who do you know that drinks that?
Yeah, I don't know. I would be. I don't. I would. That's from Nashville. I'm not sure. I would be doing Knob Creek or Bullet myself, but hey, to each its own.
I just bought a giant thing of Bullet Rye from Costco.
Oof!
Like I didn't know they made like half gallons.
It's amazing how cheap it is down here too. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so who is this? I'm in GA butthole, and I have
four within 45 minutes.
45 minutes. Nice. Okay, I need to figure out who I'm on. I don't know who that is. All right. So, okay, back to the interview before the awkward questions. It's Brent. Oh, okay. Brent Rushing. What's up, Brent? Hey, Brent. All right, I know it's you now. There's a way to authenticate through Facebook. If you can figure out how to do it, do it. If not, I just know it's you. Thanks for watching, Brent. Love you, man. He was my roommate for a minute and my bar buddy for a long time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I think we probably worked together a few times too. But so getting back to the brewery, can you give a hint of anything that might be coming from your brewery in the near future?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm sitting amongst my 5 fermenters, and we have out of the 5, we've got 4 new ones that are going to be hitting the market probably within the next 3 weeks. We have an IPL, which is our first foray into an Indian Pale Lager.
Nice.
And we're actually going to be calling it Knee for those Monty Python fans out there, the Knights of Knee.
Knights of Knee.
But I think if you put Knee and IPL together, you can kind of guess where people are going to go with that word.
The nipple.
That's right. We also have a lime pilsner coming out, getting ready for the summertime. It's crazy lime aroma and just a great lime smooth flavor. What else do we have? We have a red IPA that we're starting out right now. So the way that we do things is you're always going to find something new in our brewery. What we normally do about 4 batches at a time, where we'll order ingredients for 4 different beers. What we try and do is 2 where we're refilling one of our standard or one of our regulars, if you want to call it that, our flagships. And then the other 2 are brand new. So we always, like every 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to have 1 or 2 brand new beers that are coming out that we a lot of times have never even tried. So we've got the IPL, we got a red IPA, we have a lime lager, we have a Belgian triple. We've never been on a Belgian triple before, so we're trying that out as well. But we really only have 4 beers that are our flagships, and everything else is just rotational. Whatever we can come up with and have fun with.
Nice, very nice.
So what's the largest beer gathering or festival that you guys have gone to?
Oh, it's a good question.
Or has there been any festivals like?
Yeah, well, so
we had a bit highlight.
We've never done any of the big ones like the beer fests or the Cincinnati Beer Fest or anything like that. It's very expensive to get involved in those. They're not free. Matter of fact, a lot of times you're giving a lot away and you're really getting nothing back, and it's more of a marketing and branding thing. The size of our brewery, it's very difficult to get into the larger beer fests, but during the high months, we're usually doing a festival every weekend. We're doing a lot up in Lebanon, which is our sister city here outside of Mason. We've done a few out in the Morrow area. We actually had one which I was stoked to be involved with. We got invited to go to one where we were all going to actually be down on the Reds field down at Great American Ballpark.
Nice.
And serving beer, and I was so stoked, and of course it's canceled.
Yeah,
and
to be continued.
Exactly. Hopefully. So I think the largest one to date that we've had probably had over 1,000 people, and we were serving up. We went through probably 5 barrels that day, which for me is an entire batch of beer. So you can imagine the toll that it'll take on a brewery my size to try and get into those bigger ones.
Yeah.
So have you gotten any awards for any of your beers?
No, nothing yet.
Not yet.
We've only really entered.
You got the Dirt Sailor Award, sir.
Yeah.
Dirt Sailor Award.
First one.
You have the Dirt Sailor Award.
Yeah, it comes with a sticker. No, you get a sticker.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
I will post that up on the wall. So we've only submitted really one beer into one competition. That was a honey beer. We have a Max 59, which is our braggot, which is also a honey ale. We use local honey in it. It's very tasty. We entered it into a honey competition last year, but we were only about 4 months old, so you can imagine it probably didn't do that great. But we did have a beer, the ESB, which you have, that we entered that into the World Beer Cup, and of course that was canceled. But the U.S. Open, which was supposed to be in May, was actually postponed until this fall.
ESB.
And we're gonna roll out 5 beers to that one, so we're hoping to get some awards there. But it's more of a lack of trying than it is a lack of quality or a lack of winning.
So when John and I came to the Common Beer, when was it, about 2-3 weeks ago? Yeah, he saw ESB on your board, and he's like, I gotta try that. And I consider myself a beer person, and I think I may have heard of ESB one time before that. So I'm about to pour it right now, but can you tell me what exactly an ESB is?
Sure. So an ESB is short for an extra special bitter, which is actually an English style beer. There's 3 levels. You have bitter, you have best bitter. Am I saying that right?
Is that based on the IBU counts and stuff like that? Like how they're rated?
It's not only the IBUs, but it's also the malt levels that you're doing. So when you have just a bitter beer, it's going to be a much lighter beer. When you get into the extra special bitters, you're going to get much more of an amber color to it. So we're using more roasted malts on that. So actually, extra special bitter gets a bad name for itself. As you'll taste, Jeff, it's actually not a bitter beer. There's actually more of a malt profile on it than there is a hoppy bitterness to it. And the reason it's called a bitter is because it was kind of when the English started using hops as a flavoring component to beer. So you had basically a population of beer drinkers that had been drinking lagers and ales their whole life with very minimal hop profile on it. And all of a sudden in comes this bitter beer that has a little bit of hoppiness to it. So they called it a bitter beer. But as you'll taste, it's actually very malty. It's kind of sweet. And you're just going to get a little bit of a dryness or bitterness on the backside. So on that, we actually use an English hop. It's called East Kent Golding. It's a very popular malt over in the European area, especially in England. But that was one of my first home brews I've ever made. And I absolutely demand that is on at all times.
Nice.
And as the boss, you can make that call.
Damn straight I can.
The first ESP I ever
now,
was
did you
Red Hook ESP?
Yeah, Red Hook is probably the most
Red Hook
popular.
is an
Yeah,
ESP? Yeah, I've had
probably
Red
the
Hook.
most popular.
ESP.
Now, did you go to England or outside the U.S. to get a taste for ESPs, or did you sample the ones that were already imported and kind of just get your ideas off that?
No, actually, I just went online and grabbed a recipe. It sounded like an interesting style to make.
Nice.
So I just made it and fell in love with it. I mean, it's a very it's a sessional beer. I mean, you can totally just drink that all day long. Feel very good about yourself, not get full. And then over
and one.
Exactly. So over the last 10 years, we've just kind of changed very little about that beer, just because I think the original recipe, I got very lucky and just landed on a great one.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Thank you.
So if you had to pick a favorite beer from the brewery and offer it to a stranger, random person, you didn't know their flavor, what would you pick?
ESB, hands down.
Yeah,
I think it's one of the most approachable styles, because it's there's not a lot of bitterness, there's not a lot of fruitiness. It's just like I said, it's just a great sessional beer, pretty universal in flavor. But we have we have several English folks that come in and they dial in on that every single time, because it is something that, although they're extra special bitters can vary in its bitterness, ours is so mild that they just love to come in and kind of get a feel for, what they're used to back in England and drinking. So that is by far one of my favorite beers to drink. And if you're not a craft beer drinker, I would push you towards that beer.
That was the first beer that got me hooked on craft beer, was Red Hook ESB, actually.
It doesn't surprise me. It's a great beer.
15 years ago, a buddy of mine introduced me to it. And I was like, oh my God, this is the first beer I've ever had that I'm like, this is really good. I enjoy the taste of this. So.
Yeah.
Now I have a question for you.
Yeah,
go ahead, man.
When you do a different beer and you try it, like I do some taste tests sometimes in places where we really feel like a theater, and there's like 40, 50 different craft brewers there, and they're all trying it. And to the layperson, what I try to do is I try to explain bitters, like the IBU thing. And my explanation to them is, and it might not be right, but it's like how much it tastes like a plant. I'm like, the lower the IBU is how much it tastes like. And I'm like, I try to explain what hops are. I'm like, it looks a lot like weed. And a lot of college kids are like, oh, I'm in. But I'm like, the hoppiness is the bitterness. I'm like, the lower that count is, the less it tastes like a plant. You do double hops, triple hops, like you said. But that's how I explain it. Is that good or bad?
It's about half right. So IBUs are driven by two different things. One is malt and one is hops. Now, the yeast will play a part in it, depending upon the type of yeast that you use. But the two main drivers are the malts and the hops. The hops are what people are used to saying that, there's a bitterness to this, so it must be a hoppy beer. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. A lot of times you can use a roasted malt or a flavored malt that will actually drive up the bitterness as well. But I don't think you're off in what you're saying. And to be quite honest with you, you're probably 75% correct. So it's better than nothing, right? But when you get into like the really, really bitter beers, one of the main drivers that'll get it to that level is definitely a hop profile, especially when you start getting into dry hopping. So for the layman, a dry hop is literally when you're in the boil kettle, which is here, you will be adding some hops throughout the boil process, which is anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. You then are transferring it to the fermenter, and you can, when it gets down to a certain temperature, you can actually just add hops right into the fermenter, and you're actually going to get a lot of sorry, I'm waving to a customer of mine. So
nice.
Keep them going. Got to come back in.
Right. Hell yeah.
So always selling.
Oh, dude, always be selling.
ABC.
So
that's an S. ABS. I don't even know how to spell ABS.
Closing. Hey, always be closing.
Always closing. That's ABC. And that's selling too.
Already been chewed.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely when you're dry hopping, that's when the hops don't have an opportunity to get affected by the boil. It's just really the native flavor of the hop that you're going to be tasting coming out of the beer, or smelling for that matter. So I'll keep it kind of short, but there's actually two different kinds of hops when you're brewing beer, and they are based on the varietal that you're using. You have what's called an aroma hop, and that truly is what you're smelling. And aroma hops are usually added in either towards the end of a boil or dry hopped. So that's when you get it up to your nose and you're smelling the beer, you're going to get the aroma hop smell. You also have what's called a bittering hop. A bittering hop is usually what you use at the beginning of the boil, and what you're trying to do by boiling it longer is you're releasing more of the tannins that are actually in the plant itself, and that's where you're going to get bitterness on the taste of the beer itself. So when you're adding hops into a fermenter, you're really going for more of the aroma than you are the bitterness, even though you can draw some of that. So back to your original question, you're not wrong at all.
Thank you.
But there is a malt or an effect that malt can make on bitterness as well. What's crazy is
the easiest way to explain it.
Totally,
because you get the drunk wives and I'm like, I always know for sell the wife, she's gonna make him buy it walking out the door.
Exactly.
And, we have like the better table, so she's like, I don't understand this. I'm like, well.
Well, there's actually one more component that I didn't know about until actually I started brewing here commercially. The human palate only has the ability to detect up to a certain IBU. So when you go to a store and you buy 100 IBU beer, your mouth is never going to know that it's 100, because you're only going to be able to. I believe the threshold is around 70, 75. Once you get above that, the human palate can't detect it. So I made a beer one time. I was trying to clone Zombie Dust from Three Floyds.
Yeah, that's good beer. Beer.
It was one of my favorites originally. It still is. But so I went down to Listerman's, which people are familiar with here in Cincinnati. It's one of not only one of our better breweries here, but also they have an ingredient shop there, basically a home brewer shop there. So I went down there and with this recipe, and I'm gathering all the ingredients for a 5-gallon bucket. And I walked up there with all these hops, and the guy looked at me. He's like, "We'll take that one out. We'll take that one out. We'll take that one out. We'll take that one out. There you go. This is what you want to do." Because I would have been like 150 IBUs, and the guy's like, "You're literally throwing money down the tubes."
That's good to know, though. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
You only got so many taste buds.
Exactly. You can only wreck so many of them.
You know, when I was in high school, I think I did a lot of dry hopping.
Yeah.
That's
sure
humping,
you did.
Tom. You did a lot of dry humping.
Dry humping. That's posts and stuff. That's not the same thing.
Oh,
that poor girl's leg was not the same thing.
And if it actually burns, it doesn't count as hopping.
I've been doing it all wrong.
Damn it.
All right, so I have an easier question for you.
Sure.
If you could pick a favorite beer from an Ohio brewery that is not your own, what would that be?
Believe it or not, it would be right down the street, Sonder Brewing. They have a beer called Cato, which is a coffee Kolsch, and it's literally one of the lightest beers you drink, and it is pure coffee smell and pure coffee taste. It's an amazing combination of flavors, and that is definitely one of my go-tos when I'm just drinking out and about. And if I go to Sonder, I will always order that one first, just because the first time I tried it, I was blown away that they could get that kind of coffee flavor into a beer that's lighter than a Miller Lite. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great beer.
Nice.
It's great.
My go-to around here, I've only been here a few short months, but so far, if I'm in the stores, it would be March 1st Red. The red beer is a solid red beer.
That it is.
And John and I, we've talked a lot about how the red beer game went down when the IPAs took over. Just, I don't know. The red beers were it for a while, but once IPAs hit, the red beers went away. And I'm glad to see people are trying to embrace red beers again. For me, red beers they were my go-to for many, many years.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the evolution of even the commercial, like the macro breweries, the first real attempt at a micro brew was what was the name of that? Red Dog.
Yeah.
Red Dog.
Yeah,
I remember that.
had the bulldog on the label.
Yeah,
and that was a red beer. And that was one of the big breweries trying to say, hey, we make something other than a lager and a pilsner. And so there was a run on reds for a while, and a lot of the craft breweries kind of went towards the amber side of things. But then, of course, as we all know, all good things come to an end. But to your point, Jeff, there are a lot of people that are coming back to the ambers and the reds, because we have 3 of them on tap here, and they're very popular.
Well, that's what I'm drinking tonight is an amber. So
very nice. Fat Tire.
Oh yeah, one of my go-tos.
So I'm changing things up now, and I popped all 3 of them. This is the 4th. It's the Lortz Prayer IPA. IPAs are my favorite, and I saved it for last.
Good move.
Yeah.
So the Lord's Prayer is a West Coast IPA style. So you're going to get some piney flavors into it, a little bit of earthy flavors. Obviously, it's our namesake beer. That party that I told you about at my buddy's restaurant, the guy that the party was for looked at me, and this is when I was home brewing, and he said, "Hey man, you got to name a beer the Lord's Prayer." And I was like,
"That's good.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Absolutely
good. It's really good."
Yeah. So what we tried to do with that beer is we tried to really come at it with a balanced flavor. So we used 4 different hops in it. All of them come from the West Coast style, very earthy, very piney. But we balanced them out to the point where you really can't tell one from the other, but you're getting a combination of the 4. So we use Columbus, Centennial, Citra, and Simcoe, with the lightest being on the Columbus because that's a bittering hop. And you're going to get a really good hoppy flavor, but it's such a mishmash of 4 different hops. You're really not going to be able to pin down the one flavor. It's just going to evolve into just a really good West Coast earthy style IPA.
Nice.
Let me get another taste of it.
You always got to take 2 tastes of any beer you try.
Yep.
Well, most of the time, and I got to be honest with you, when I see a beer, when the bartender says, "Do you want to give it a try?" I don't do that. I say, "Just give me the whole." I have to take the whole beer.
I'll drink them all. I get the whole line.
No, I don't.
You're one of those guys.
I have to do the whole beer.
I'll do a pint plate, please.
Oh yeah,
that's what I'll do.
We're gonna taste them all. I haven't had one I hated yet, so I'm doing good. Different countries, different states. I'm like,
man, we had a brewery here for a while that had some pretty shitty beers when they first started.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen.
And then like a year later, I came back and it was much, much, much better. Everything I tried was much better.
Yeah, we get a lot of the same feedback. The guys that the people that came in the first couple months, they're coming back, thankfully, and their first reaction is, "My God, the beers are so much better." And it's kind of a hard pill to swallow for a brewery because when you open, you think, "Yeah, I'm top of the world. I got a brewery. I'm good. All my beers are great." But in reality, you have to bite the bullet, and you have to open, and you have to just evolve into making better beer. So I always tell people, and actually, very short story. We had a guy come in like the first week, and he sat down, and he pulled out a notebook, and he ordered a flight of beers. And I had only 7 beers when we started. So he ordered the flight, and I gave him the 7th one because we only do 6 flights. So he pulls out this notebook, didn't talk to anybody, never lifted his head, and he's just writing these notes. And so I'm standing behind the bar. I'm like, okay, this is my first real beer drinker. So I walk over to him. I'm like, and I pulled the 7th beer and brought it over to him and said, obviously you're interested in trying all my beers. So I want to make sure you get them all. So, what do you think? And he looks at me and he goes, "I got to tell you, man, this one right here." And he pointed at the 3rd one. He said, "This is my 8,000th beer that I've tried." And he said, "I got to be honest with you, your beers are C+ at best." As a brewery owner, I was just like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me? They all suck."
Savage.
But what he said was, and of course, my first question is, "So where are you going to publish this information?"
Right.
And he said, "Oh, no. He said, absolutely not. I'll be back in 8-9 months, and I'm going to redo it again. And I promise you, this is just more for me to build a history with your brewery. so I can really see how you've evolved and changed. 8 months from now, you're damn right it's going to be published. But right now, this is just for me. I was like, thank you.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Time and knowledge, very important times.
Exactly. You know what? I haven't seen him. I don't know. I mean, he was a much older gentleman, and if he's tried 8,000 beers, the chance of him coming back to me anytime soon is probably pretty low. But I'll welcome him with open arms.
Yeah. Maybe COVID took him out.
Oh, damn, dude.
No, he's good. He's fine. He's trying him at home.
Exactly.
Morbidness. No, he's good. He's trying now 8,552.
I'm sorry. That's my stand-up comedy act coming out.
You might want to consider editing that one before you use it live.
Zing. So if you had a magic wand and you could change the American beer universe, what would you do?
Damn. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I would change much of anything. Contrary to popular belief, the craft brew industry is very supportive of the macro brew industry as well. Our goal as an industry is to get 30% of the taps in bars and restaurants. The other 70, the macro brewers can have it because there's a place for them. They're an essential part of our industry that provides an availability to people that want to drink macro beers. And to be quite honest with you, the fact that they can replicate this, their beers over and over again at the production levels that they do is just, it's an amazing feat. All the equipment in the world is, you still have fail points. And the fact that these guys can chug out millions of gallons of beer and have it taste the same from one can to the next is just, it's awe-inspiring. As a brewer, it's awe-inspiring. So I would say, if I did want to change one thing, I would certainly like to see the craft beer industry get, a little bit bigger, which I think we're going to be seeing over the next 5 to 10 years. And to be quite honest with you, I would much rather have the collaborative effect of this industry stay in place, expand Karen's palate. That's beautiful. You know what? That's the other reason it's good to have macro breweries that can have the Karens. I don't want them in my place.
Right. You get to tell them they
enjoy your Bud Light, Karen.
Yeah. Go have your Mick Ultra. Enjoy it. It's never going to change, so you're good. But I think one of my biggest fears is as the industry grows, I kind of fear that competitive edge or the competitiveness that you were talking about earlier would actually begin to creep in. And as a craft brewery owner, I don't want that. One of the greatest things about this industry is the fact that everybody gets along and everybody supports each other. And if we ever got to the point where we were big enough to where people started wishing ill will on other breweries, that's just not good. It's just going to turn things bad. So if I had a magic wand, it would be that in the future, when we do get bigger, that we still stay friends.
Nice.
That's a fantastic answer.
That's a good call.
Well, I know when we were at 16 Lortz, they talked very highly about you, and they talked about how you guys were friends and cooperated together, just like what you said.
It's funny. Mike, the owner of 16 Lortz, was the guy that was in here today.
I kind of figured. Nice.
Yeah, so we actually talk on the phone maybe every couple of weeks, and we visit each other's breweries. And I hope you guys get a chance to go down there. Really nice guy, really good brewer. And a really different space. That's the other nice thing about the three breweries around us. The three breweries have completely different feels. We have Sonder, that's the 30-barrel system, huge place, seats a couple hundred. 16 Lortz is more around about 120, 130. And then we have lowly 60 in ours. But we have our people that like to come in and have that personal experience. Be a little bit more involved in talking to not only the ownership, but also the people that they'll see over and over again, like our bar manager and our brewer and things like that. So that's a great thing about Mason right now is we have the ability to offer three different experiences, and we highly encourage everybody to try all three if they're in and from out of town or if they're just here and they're looking for something to do.
So do you have any advice for? Let me put it on myself. Do you have any advice for someone who's wanting to follow your path, follow your footsteps, and maybe step out into the brewery scene on their own?
A ton of advice. And we have a lot of places, or a lot of people that come in that are looking to open breweries that come to us and other breweries, and we'll have sit downs with them. As with opening any small business, we had just some awful nights during build out and during getting open and getting the equipment in. And my best advice to them is the same thing I told a guy who's actually opening a brewery here in about 3 weeks, about 10, 15 miles from here. You are going to have some awful downs. You're going to have some days that you don't want to get out of the bed. You don't want to go to the brewery. You don't want to go deal with stuff. But they will be offset. You stick with it. You're going to have some incredible days. And highs and lows even out. And eventually you get to a point where you're in that happy medium, which I'm not there yet, but I'm hoping to get there soon.
Soon enough.
Yeah, but there's a lot of little tidbits of advice that we all like to give, and we all answer questions. We all provide leads to different things, different ingredients, different people that offer things locally. We share a lot of the same people that do work on breweries or do work on equipment. But truly, my biggest bit of advice is, on your worst night, you got to just close your eyes and go to bed, because you're going to wake up the next day and it's going to be another day, and things will get better.
All right. Awesome. So let me bring it back to, I lost my mouse. There we go. Good. Okay. So we threw some heavy hitting questions at you, Mark, and I realized that it was hard. But what we have next, not so hard questions. And I definitely appreciate you coming and joining us tonight.
Sure.
I don't want to look past that. But next part is going to be some more questions. They're fun questions. And what they are they can be one word answers, one sentence, or you can take a paragraph. Do as much, as little as you want. They have nothing to do with anything we previously talked about. They're just kind of fun. So, yeah. So let's get at it. And we call it the Dirty Dozen because there's 12 questions. We're the Dirt Sailors, and they're the Dirty Dozen. Okay. First, and I'm gonna put the screen on you the whole time. All right. Okay. So, what do you think is the most unpleasant sounding word?
Dripping water.
That's a problem.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I ask these questions to everybody. So, all right. So, what would you rather blow up 100 balloons or lick 500 envelopes?
Oh, the balloons.
You'd rather blow
as long as I get to breathe back whatever I'm breathing into them. There we go. Because it's going to be burning.
Okay. If you could have only 3 apps on your cell phone, what would they be?
Well, as a brewery owner, I'd have to go with Facebook. It's essential. What other apps? God, I'm going to sound so stale.
It's fine. It's fine.
I don't do much on my phone other than check the weather, go find some place to go with maps, and check Facebook. So I guess I'll go with those 3 boring but essential apps that I have.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
You're just ahead of the curve.
Yeah, last 3 I picked too.
Alive or dead, what artist or band would you like to play at your funeral?
Jerry Garcia.
Oh yeah, good answer. Who would you like to play yourself in a movie?
Oh, crap! I can't remember the guy's name. He's a comedian. He does Hot Pockets.
Jim Gaffigan.
Jim Gaffigan.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
That was a good pickup, Tom. That was good.
Yeah. So what's yeah? Hey, we get trivia next. So what's the worst job you've ever had?
That goes back a while. I would probably say heating and air. I was a heating and air tech for about a year and a half. It was residential. It was awful. Awful.
A lot of Karens.
Oh, dude. I can't tell you how many attics of insulation are up my fucking nose. Mesothelioma, here I come.
Nice. So next, if you were to die tomorrow, what little thing would you regret not doing?
Skydiving.
I got a buddy trying to talk me into it. I'm not there yet. I'm almost there. I'm almost there.
I was literally, I was at a place to skydive with my father. I was taken for his birthday, and we went through the training and everything, and we literally were shooting up, and the guy walked in and said, "It's too windy, go home." That's how close I got.
Oh.
I would have been thank you. I would have said thank you. Okay. If you had a sandwich named after you, what would be on it?
Oh, definitely bacon. Bacon, chili.
Well,
Well, that sounds good.
And cheese. We'll just go bacon, chili, and cheese.
It's blowing right out the bottom.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna die soon anyway. I might as well do it with loving my sandwich.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big
Okay.
collab.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Probably the best piece of advice I've been given is don't ever do business deals with family. It never works out in the end. Now that's excluding my wife, just to be clear, because she's part owner of the business.
Yes, I mean you could say that as long as you're recording, like now, but when you're not recording, your answer might be different.
No,
if she can
it's
walk in at
always
any minute, I'd be screwed.
So it's going to end up.
How do you define success?
I'll go with like what I truly believe, and it's probably a standard answer, but happiness. If you're happy with what you're doing, you're going to be successful whether you're making a ton of money or not. And I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I'm not making a ton of money right now. So I feel like I'm being very successful with this business because I can come to work every day and have a smile on my face.
I don't know. You are making a ton of people happy in the area though. Like seriously, you have one of the coolest spots in the area.
Everyone loves the brewer.
Yeah, I don't know what Tom.
I think Tom died.
Tom just got mad at something.
I think he just got shot by a sniper, but I could be wrong. Oh, he's alive.
I'm okay.
Oh, he ducked. Yeah, he's good.
Oh yeah,
you gotta pay that child support, Tom.
Yeah. Last question.
Yep, keep firing him.
If you could shout anything to the entire world, what would you shout?
Holy cow, that's a tough one. I thought you said these were easy.
Drink red beer.
Drink local. I don't know. I mean,
That's a great answer. So shout it.
No, I can't because I got customers out here. I don't want to scare anybody.
All right. True enough. Mark, well, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to let you get back to your business. It was awesome interviewing tonight. Thank you for joining us. It's been cool. So thank you. Any guys, do you have anything to say?
No, I'd like to thank him for coming. It was great, great knowledge and great. I love the supportiveness of you and all the brewers around you, and I think that's really awesome that everybody's willing to chip in and help out, especially in the harder times now when you had to close down and figure out. Because my local brewer, he came out with the COVID pack, and you'd go and you'd order out, and he had different sets of beer, different things, and you had COVID 1, 2, or 3 pack, and that's how we kept them going throughout this whole thing. So
it was amazing the support that we got from our customers and from our locals during the time, because we were doing just growler sales, and the amount of people that came in, and not only were ordering growlers, but the amount of people that they were tipping was just it gave me goosebumps every night. because we were seeing people literally paying double for a growler and just saying, we want you to keep this. We want you to be around when the whole thing is over. So awesome. The support, not only for breweries, but for restaurants and all these businesses. I mean, it just kudos to everybody, for stepping up and helping local businesses. And, I can't thank our customers enough. It was amazing.
All right, cool, man. Hey, thanks for joining us, and hey, I'll be back. We'll stay in touch. All right, man.
Oh, definitely. And if you guys are in town, please make sure to introduce yourselves and let's sit down. Let's have a beer. We'll pull something from the fermenters and get something fresh.
Yeah.
And we got the first Dirt Sailor award for you, so you'll be getting a sticker from us.
I wanted to say the first one ever. It's got to say it on the sticker.
There you go. We'll remake one.
I might have to put a Sharpie marker on it.
I have no fear. I'll throw it on there.
All right, then. All right. Hey, well, thank you, and have a great evening.
Hey, guys. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. It's nice meeting you all. Hopefully, we'll see you guys soon.
Absolutely. All right.
See you guys.
Yes.
Drink local.
That's right.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, but I must also bow out as well before the trivia, unfortunately.
All right.
I'm in Carlos's basement, and I feel bad that I've been down, but I told him I had an obligation, and I'm glad. I like it, so I want to keep it going. But it's my first night out.
It's all good. We can have a short night. It was a good show. Yeah. Exactly. A little different than what we normally do, but hey, thank you guys for showing up. It was good.
Yeah.
I learned so much about beer.
Dude, right.
Yeah, I liked it. It was cool, dude.
All right, man. Hey, you guys have a good Saturday night.
Absolutely. I'm about to go tear it up. Doing some peanut butter whiskey shots.
Tear it up. All right, man. You guys be good. Later.
All right,
man.
Take it easy, fellas.